This session, I'm going to guide you through some tips to boost user adoption and best practices for your CRM solution, regardless of what vendor. So my name is Jo Butler, and I am the Senior Nonprofit CRM Manager at Build Consulting. I have worked for more than 13 years at a variety of nonprofits, focusing largely on improving the effectiveness of their fundraising and development operations. So I joined Build Consulting about 3 years ago and have continued to help nonprofits through our database management offering. My personal passion is to really help organizations prepare and realize how they can become more effective and strategic by utilizing their rich constituent data to drive better decisions and ultimately their fundraising outcomes. So I'm going to give you just a really brief overview of who we are and what we do at Build. Build Consulting was founded in 2015 with the sole mission of helping nonprofits like yours reach their goals. We have a rockstar team with both deep data and information technology experience, paired with on-the-ground knowledge of the daily realities of life at a nonprofit. And we help nonprofits make the most out of their technology with the following services. Because of our experience, we understand your unique challenge and can ground your organization in what is needed to get the most from your investments. So with the CIO offering, Build works with your leadership and other team members to make sure technology serves the needs of the organization. We are also attentive to how new technology brings organizational change and help guide that change process. For our assessment and roadmaps, offering, the first step to successfully selecting and implementing the right technology is to understand what you've already got and how well that is serving your organization and its teams. We've developed our assessment methodology based on decades of experience working with organizations like yours, helping each develop a clear plan to achieve short-term improvements and long-term strategic goals. The outcome of any of our assessment projects is a really clear vision for the future and a well-defined strategy to get there. And this is the offering that I lead up. We know that it's often really hard to find high caliber internal database managers. So we can provide that expertise and we'll improve how you manage and use your data so that you are working more strategically and effectively, strengthening your relationships with your constituents using that data. And here are just some of the organizations we've helped transform their habits and culture in ways that have allowed them to make the best use of their technology. So at Build, we often refer to our information strategy framework whenever we start any new engagement. And you'll notice that technology is intentionally listed last. Build believes that the health of any technology ecosystem is a function of 5 key elements. Most technology problems have their roots in the way decisions are made, the way operations are organized, and the quality of processes and data. When those are addressed well, the technological improvement is easier, but it also helps transform your organization's habits and culture in ways that allow you to make the best use of technology. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to use real life specific client engagements where I've been their information services manager to illustrate how implementing the following tips and best practices has elevated their CRM adoption. So when I arrived on the first day, I logged into their database of record in 2019. And the only real users of CRM, besides 2 of us in information services, were some development operations staff. Since then, we've onboarded almost all departments, roughly about 85% of the organization, and can proudly report now that today we have about 70% of users logging into the CRM at least once a week. But that took a very deliberate, thoughtful, patient adoption strategy. So I'm really excited to be presenting at Good Tech Fest to share my knowledge, experience, and techniques that we implemented at this client, but also additional client organizations that hopefully you can take back to your nonprofit to try. So the latest reported CRM failure rate is actually at an all-time high. I think it's at 63%. And that's because new technology can be really powerful, but it can't transform a nonprofit on its own. A new system brings new processes, automation, information, roles and responsibilities. And that's a lot of change, and resistance to change is a given in most CRM adoptions. And while there could be a host of reasons why CRM adoption strategies fail or succeed, we've discovered some common issues. And that is the lack of leadership, engagement, and governance, insufficient training and resources, lack of accountability, and mistrust of data accuracy and use. So I'm going to walk you through some specific tactics and methods that I've deployed to avoid these. So let's start with lack of leadership, engagement, and governance. So having executive leadership engagement establishes commitment and encourages collaboration between departments. Without executive support, your CRM is likely doomed from the start. Leadership needs to be the organization's biggest cheerleader for the use of CRM. And you'll get that executive buy-in if you can demonstrate that the CRM will drive growth by resulting in better member retention, more effective marketing, and more funding opportunities. So in order to engage leadership, we really needed to provide them with a tailored executive level onboarding. So we provided leadership with the level of training needed to understand the role of CRM plays in the ability to track, measure, and evaluate their strategic goals. Leadership now recognizes how CRM enables staff to provide a comprehensive evaluation report to their board of directors. And our internal mantra is, if it's not in the system, it never happened. So staff and management take their cues from the executive team. So it's really imperative that they deliver visible, vocal, and active CRM sponsorship. We also have had the opportunity for information services to present at strategy council meetings, which are sort of this client's top level executives, to provide updates on key CRM projects or to discuss potential roadblocks or any outcomes from internal meetings like the Data Governance Committee meeting, which I'll talk about next. So data occupies a very curious place for many fundraising programs, marketing teams. They will happily and readily acknowledge its importance, but they also treat it as the exclusive territory of the IT or IS department. They're very happy to make use of their insights, but getting to know the ins and outs of an effective data management policy is in their minds unnecessary. It's somewhat understandable, but it's mistaken. So you need to emphasize that everyone who uses the CRM owns it. I like to think of it like a public traded company. Anyone who has a share is part owner. Certain groups hold more shares and therefore more ownership, but who has the ultimate say? So if each department is asking for a new update, a different workflow, or has conflicting opinions, who makes the call? Like, which department has the responsibility? This is why I highly recommend establishing a data governance committee. So data governance forms the basis for org-wide data management and makes the efficient use of trustworthy data possible. It's important to remember that data governance differs from data management. So data governance acts as the decision-making function that has authority over the data management actions that cross over multiple teams. And data management are those actions taken to execute your data governance framework. So a data governance committee discusses recommended changes to current procedures, establishment of new coding, and helps define the use of data. The key always is to help maintain that balance between protocol and flexibility, and to empower users to feel a sense of ownership over data standards and quality. So we formalized a data governance charter with vision and mission. We created a decision-making protocol, and we defined, the participants' roles and responsibilities. This committee should always involve a representative from every department that either has contact with the CRM or the constituents that your organization serves in some shape or form. This really helps break down departmental barriers, freeing data from those dedicated department silos and creating a uniform, or at least consistent, processes for accessing and using your constituent information. We also created the role of the data steward, and while they serve an important role on the committee, this is someone that each department empowers and supports as their subject matter expert. So each data steward must have a really good understanding of the data and processes their team needs. They are able to represent their department's needs, concerns, when any new recommendation is being brought for discussion or approval at those data governance committee meetings. They should also be allowed time at the end, at their department meetings, to report back to their teammates on what was discussed at the data governance committee meeting, and really be a conduit between the committee and their department. A successful data steward can really enable the CRM to provide reliable data that their department and organization can trust. And the investment in this data steward role will pay for itself many times over, because better data practices allow you to create efficiency and effectiveness throughout the whole of your organization. So the next barrier to prepare for was insufficient training and resources. Seems like a no-brainer, but no matter how you decide to roll out your CRM, it's imperative that you fully train your team. And CRM can have a steep learning curve, presenting a challenge even for relatively tech-savvy people. Training is vital to the success of CRM adoption. It's really unrealistic to force a new process on your team and expect them to be productive right away without structured training. So we ensured that current staff were trained at the overall basic functionality level, but then we took the time to meet with each department, sometimes even at the role level, to provide them with task, role-specific training. We made sure that everyone in the department understood how their part of the process fits into the overall workflow of the CRM. Understanding how their role affects the larger picture was a really important driver for them to enter and engage with the CRM effectively. So for new employees, we created a well-planned, rock-solid user onboarding experience, which is critical for introducing your employees to the CRM. So for the hiring directors, we created a checklist that helps them keep CRM onboarding front and center of their new employees' onboarding experience. So you'll see it's necessary for directors to be very direct regarding the onboarding of a new employee. It also sets the expectation as to what is needed in order for new staff to gain access to the system and to be trained accordingly. This also prompts the director to be really considerate and deliberate about the comprehensive training plan. So new staff being onboarded feel like they're being incorporated into something that everyone is a part of, and the department's manager and the department's data steward feel ownership over the new hire's success of their CRM use. It's also important to make sure that special tasks like merging or deceasing records are only given to the right personnel, so training on those tasks can be incorporated. It's also essential to continue training even after the initial software implementation. You will have new employees, people will change roles, your processes will change. So employee training is done effectively when it's reinforced and refreshed consistently. So as with any technology, CRM software is constantly adapting to leverage new capabilities. So regular training opportunities will keep everyone up to date on any new features. It can also be, a great refresher for those who may not be utilizing the CRM to its full potential. So in addition to the initial training, we keep staff informed of new functionality available by hosting brown bag sessions. So these are just, bring your lunch into the conference room, or Zoom, virtual now, everything. And we show them how functionality that can help them save time, save effort, automate workflows to remove some of the tedious tasks from their job. We also have a fortnightly luncheon with the data stewards, where we sort of emphasize that this is a really safe place to discuss issues that they might be experiencing with their department's colleagues, like not putting their data in timely, sharing knowledge, and maybe even some shortcuts that they've found. And then we also encourage staff to participate in, the roadmap sessions or any sort of webinars that your CRM software vendor may host, and also voting on any of the ideas bank submissions that your organization would benefit from. We also continue to talk about CRM when given the opportunities to present at internal meetings. So for example, our monthly all-staff meeting, we use this as an opportunity to inform staff on new CRM functionality, especially when they're rolling out new improvements. We use this opportunity to show results of an organization-wide campaign using data and metrics, right out of the CRM. And remind anybody of upcoming trainings or brown bags. We also recommend requesting 5 to 10 minutes on the agenda to present at each department's regular team meeting, just to discuss any CRM data improvements or issues that are specific to their department's processes and tasks. Another touch point is that information services team meets quarterly with department directors and their data steward regarding the CRM and any information systems priorities. So we ask them what has been working well, things that haven't been working well, getting ahead of any new projects that they might be planning that they're not really considering, their data implications. So, plain and simple, if you don't invest in proper onboarding, training, and continued communication and spotlight on your CRM, you'll struggle to gain adoption and get buy-in and just leave a ton of value on the table. So during these trainings, we have by our side and always reference our CRM policies and procedures manual. So documenting policies and procedures really helps ensure data consistency and increases efficiency. And while every organization's policies and procedures are unique, the manual should provide details on how your organization specifically enters and maintains records and performs standard database functions like address processing. There should not be a recreation of the standard overall training documentation that your CRM vendor provides. The manual should be really specific on how your nonprofit uses, constituent categories, for example, how they are defined and applied. So for this one client, they're using Razor's Edge. So we have manuals both for the database view and for Razor's Edge NXT. We provide screenshots and a step-by-step entry guide. We also have, code table definitions and, their expected use. And we also created these sort of one-page cheat sheets for just 30-minute data entry drill, prompting with questions that are specific to a unique task, like reporting actions. So they do this, we would prefer they do it, as it happens, but most of the time it's, every 3 days, every week, they use this and go through their activities for the previous week and enter them in. You also have to sort of update your manual when a new or changed process arises. So it's a really living document that's stored for anybody in a central location so that it's easy to find. So with this particular client, we used Microsoft Teams for storing all of our user guides and manuals. You can also remind your users that it's okay to ask questions and, more importantly, ask for help no matter how long it's been since their training. So include somewhere instructions for a way for database users to follow when they need help troubleshooting issues or they have data needs outside of their responsibilities or their skill set. So for that, we use Teamwork Desk to help track and prioritize requests in a timely and transparent manner. And it also takes those requests out of, 2 or 3 people's email inboxes. Other staff, don't need to have access to this. We just set up a dedicated email, for example, CRM support at yournonprofit.org, and then we forward that email to Teamwork Desk and it creates a service ticket. And then you can tag it with the department, the type of request. And so we also recommend creating a virtual collaboration space. So for this, we use the conversations feature within Microsoft Teams. And so we create a channel called Ask a Colleague, where staff can ask each other questions, learn from their peers. We found that this really fosters community and collaboration. It also takes some of the stress off the few of us, information service managers, as being the only resource that can help with any CRM. You really don't need to be an expert to provide a simple, time-saving tip. So now we have staff all trained up and ready to go, but now we have to motivate people to use the CRM, which brings us to facing the lack of accountability and incentives. So building a culture of accountability at every level of your nonprofit is essential to success, and setting up your CRM adoption for true victory requires all staff to feel as though what they do or what they don't do has consequence. So performance reviews provide a great opportunity to make sure employees know where they stand, both, with successes or failures. So we worked with human resources to incorporate into job descriptions the responsibility for data entry and CRM use. This really ensures that CRM responsibilities are non-negotiable, and now they're tied to annual performance reviews. So those incentives should always be reserved for staff who meet or exceed the expected data entry standards established by your organization. Otherwise, what's the point of having those standards at all? Often, rewarding employees for non-performance really discourages those high performers from trying. And it also spreads, subpar performance among staff who aren't putting their best foot forward. It's really important to focus and understand how you will measure the impact of your accountability improvements. So, at this client, at the beginning of the year, they put together their annual work plan. So, information services will meet with each department after they've completed it and will help align their objectives and goals within the CRM. So, we help set up or improve any data structure in order for them to help enter, track, and report on the goals and objectives in those work plans. Ultimately, you really need to tie CRM both to the tactics and the outcomes so you can measure the effectiveness of your efforts. So whether it's in a one-on-one or full team meeting, incorporating the use of CRM as a management tool in real time will bolster incentive and accountability. So based on the purpose of those meetings, we created a variety of reports and dashboards that will help measure and monitor those activities. So metrics such as, evaluate the success of events, how many new names did we gather, total donations, petitions signed, report on responses to appeals, dollars raised by which segment, which message performed better, where prospects are in the pipeline, who needs a thank you call, who was recently wealth screened that needs a major gift officer assigned, or who was recently disqualified. Using the CRM live instead of coming to meetings with printed reports or attached spreadsheets really emphasizes real-time interaction with the data. So by using those dashboards live in team meetings, everyone can see that Minnie isn't entering her actions in, and look how it affects the department's overall dashboard. And then it's up to the manager and director to address that, in the meeting. Those embarrassing whoopsies only have to happen once or twice to incentivize staff to get their entries in, especially before those meetings. So, that focus is more sort of on how the CRM solution will bring about change to the organization, rather than how users will completely adopt the new technology. And it really can be a challenge to measure CRM adoption because your team might be, air quotes, using the software, but not really maximizing its use. So there are various metrics that you can track on short term and longer term to see whether your CRM is adequately utilized or not. So not just a report on who's logged into the system, but who has entered in actions, who has entered in a follow-up action, who's updated a constituent's email or phone, added a communication preference or solicit code, and then also added a supporting note detailing why that was applied. Updating a relationship record, making sure they first search for the constituent in the system before adding it. You can check when they last ran a pipeline or tickler report and then pull a query on what they did in the system after pulling that. Holding users accountable to the expectations you set will remind them that the CRM is here to stay. So now we have leadership on board cheering away about CRM. We have everybody trained and has a clear understanding of what they are required to do as part of their new responsibilities. They log into the system and the data is a mess. So naturally they think, why bother? My spreadsheet is correct and the information in there is better. And that brings us to our final barrier, which is the mistrust of data accuracy and use. So CRM, the software itself is not always the reason why adoption fails. Sometimes it's the data sources that are to blame. And data quality is a major contributor to user dissatisfaction, even when the system is actually working fine. A good example of this incomplete or incorrectly entered constituent data which can make staff skeptical about all the information in the CRM, is if the names are wrong or the phone numbers are tied to a prospect record, for instance. It's not hard to see why a fundraiser would be reluctant to rely on the CRM to make appeal calls. So the efficient management of data is an important task that requires centralized control mechanisms. So in information services, we, hang on, let me just see if there's something in the chat. Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure you could still see my screen and hear me. So data quality needs to be attacked at 3 levels. So one, never let data, whether it's within the initial migration or conversion or any subsequent import, into the system without, eyeballing it and scrubbing and cleaning it up first. The second is to spot sources of data pollution and systematically correct them. There are some automation and tools that will help, but really rely on those data stewards who both know about the meaning of data entries and care about the quality. In CRM, there's no such thing as self-healing data. And then the third is to identify business processes or data interfaces that corrupt the semantics of CRM data. So we created and implemented a series of queries that identify where data needs to be cleaned or helps to identify where more training might be needed. So these are run weekly, quarterly, monthly, and we use teamwork projects to keep track of that schedule. We can provide you with a link to some examples of those data hygiene queries as part of a follow-up to this presentation. Another giant barrier to CRM adoption is if the data that's coming from different sources needs to be manually recreated or inputted again. So we make sure that data coming into the CRM from external sources are working successfully. And this helps with data hygiene and staff's trust in the data. If your CRM is compatible, I would highly recommend the purchase of Importomatic. This is an amazing tool. I don't get paid to plug this product, but it's, saved me a lot of time. You can create data dictionaries to help translate common misspellings of table values into your configured values in the CRM. It helps with proper casing. You can add additional data that's not necessarily in the import file, like adding an attribute or constituent code, or if you're importing a group of people from an event, you can also add certain communication preferences. It's really just a great tool for managing data upon the import. And then it's also important to regularly screen national change of address, age, finder, deceasing, any data service that your nonprofit could benefit from. So for one client, knowing what congressional district people live in is a data finder that we use. So while there are probably only a few people in your organization who have permissions to import data in bulk, it's very important to stress that the health and success of the CRM is everybody's responsibility. If you see something, either fix it right then and there or say something. So as we come to a close here today, I really hope that this outline of proven successful tactics to increase your organization's use of CRM is helpful, either with your initial CRM implementation or a readoption strategy. I'm available for some questions. Otherwise, feel free to email me. Check out our website for some resources that will help you socialize these concepts internally or even roll them out straight away. But I just really want to thank you for your time and attention today. And let me know if you have any questions. Actually, I'll just keep that up. What favorite CRM platforms at a reasonable price for nonprofits? That's a really sort of loaded question. It depends on whether what services you offer. Do you have a membership service? Do you manage volunteers? Do you do peer-to-peer fundraising? Do you have an advocacy component? So it would really depend on what your nonprofit's activities are. But yes, Jenny's right. Salesforce offers 10 licenses, free licenses to nonprofit. Well, yeah, apricot. Trying to get away from specific. We're very vendor agnostic at Build, so it really depends on the specific client's needs. Yes, I can definitely share this PowerPoint on Slack. So Importomatic, it's not only for Razor's Edge. They have plugins for engaging networks, for example, and I think it's compatible with a lot of different CRM products. There are some advantages. There's some direct connections, so they have a direct connector with Luminate Online and Engaging Networks, for example. But you can also just use it as a download a CSV file and import that CSV file into your database. Katie said that these suggestions are helpful, but with smaller organizations, the committees are often going to overlap. So what I would do is, if there's a digital communications committee or, a external relations committee, just making CRM or making data just a small portion of those regular standing meetings. So it's not, have to be a part of another committee and take up another hour of, your time. I would just, carve out a small portion of those allocated meetings to directly talk about CRM or data or, technology. If you don't, or if you're too shy to ask questions now over chat, please feel free to email me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'll make sure this presentation's available on Slack. But yeah, maybe I'll get some time back so that you can grab some lunch before your next session. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for your time and attention. I know it's been wonderful.